this in a chair, well, why don't you just hang on to it? It's all on, but you won't need it until like later.
So the
It's ready to go. Just mute it, and then I'll bring it over when you need it. You don't need to. I got
oh,
it.
you got it. Oh no, I dropped my paper in the baptismal. It did. I've worked here like 9 years, and that's the first time I saw anyone drop anything. Yeah, pretty awful, pretty. Did this start?
Whenever. Oh, you're talking about the parents.
No. These have, at the end of the stems, there's an individual flower that comes out, it looks like a
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Bellarmine Chapel. I'm Tim Severin. I'm the Jesuit Parish Family Director of Sustainability and Social Mission. Long name. And I've been part of the planning team for this Embracing God's Creation series since we started 2 years ago. It's a collaborative effort of the Cincinnati Jesuit Works, which includes us here at Bellarmine Chapel, St. Xavier Church downtown, Xavier University, St. Xavier High School, the Jesuit Spiritual Center at Milford, and the newly formed Xavier Jesuit Academy in Bond Hill. So a good partnership. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're talking about Planting Native, Caring for Our Common Home with Dr. Tim Kloppenberg and Karen McCabe. But before I introduce them, I wanted us to just begin with a moment of silence and a moment of prayer. This prayer comes from Pope Francis's prayer for our earth. So I invite you just to ground yourself with God and God's deep love for you and all creation. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. So just the format for tonight. Our presenters are going to share for around 45 minutes. Then we'll break into small group discussions, invite you to try to talk to folks you haven't met before. Then we'll come back and do Q&A with them. But I know also that you want to have it a little bit more interactive than some of our other presentations. So if you were walking in, you hopefully noticed there were some saplings and acorns there on the table. They're going to be sort of door prizes, I guess you could say, for those who participate. Incentive to get involved. If you're watching on the live stream, I'm afraid you don't get a tree, but you do get to do the, not today, true. You do get to do the discussion. There's a Zoom link that's in the YouTube description. We invite you to join that Zoom link so that you can talk with others who are online when we go there. And if you're online, these slides may be hard to see on the live stream, but they are also linked in the YouTube description. So with that, I'm happy to introduce these wonderful people. Dr. Tim Kloppenberg is Professor Emeritus from Xavier University's School of Business. He's been a longtime parishioner here at Bellarmine Chapel. He's a founding member of the Arboretum in Anderson Township and a tree commissioner for Ohio, and has gotten deeply involved in trees in his retirement. Karen McCabe works here on campus as our university's horticulturalist, a very special position to have. And she has been convening and made the university designated a part of Tree Campus USA. So thank you, Karen, as well. We're excited to learn from your knowledge of trees. Come on up.
Thank you, Tim. Well, we're going to be off and on, so it's not like I'm talking for a long time and then she is. We're going to jump in on each other. So first, we're both going to start with, how did we get interested in trees? Well, when I was 6, I was in a city, Davenport, Iowa, and my parents bought a couple of acres that had been an alfalfa field and built their house there. And my dad went to the city crew and asked them, just dump leaves here instead of taking them to the dump. And then he carefully looked to see what came up. And we had more kinds of trees than anybody in town because we had seeds from everybody's. That was the start. And then there was a creek back behind us a little bit, so we loved to go hiking there. We'd swing on the vines thinking we were Tarzan and watch the beavers and the muskrats. And so I had a lot of wonderful experiences in Scouts. And it was all that was very positive. And then about 12 years ago, all my ash trees died, like so many other people. And I decided I was going to try to learn about trees so that the next bug that comes around would kill a couple trees, not all of my trees. So that's how I got started.
Hi, everyone. So I grew up in Hyde Park, and my bedroom was on the 3rd floor of the house. And even as a little kid, I remember looking out the window and watching the maple trees in our backyard bud out and then eventually leaf out. And it just really amazed me that these trees knew when to do it, and every year they did it about the same time. I grew up in a family that loved to garden, and I feel like it's in my genes. My husband and I, we bought our first house about 30 years ago, and my family, loving plants the way they do, the next thing I knew, I had like 30 plants to put in the garden. And so, I started planting, and then I just really enjoyed it. I first was an environmental major in college, and I just really got into horticulture, and I decided to go to school for horticulture. So here I am.
Good. So I'll take over for a little while, and what we have here this evening essentially is 3 different short talks, if you will. And the first one is, why should we plant native plants? And we believe we're probably preaching to the choir on this, but we're going to bring out some ideas, spiritual ideas, starting with the Pope. We're going to bring out some ideas related to health and some practical ideas. And then what we're going to do is talk about how do we select a plant that's appropriate for our place? And how do we decide what site to put it on? And Karen's really going to have the meat of that part because she's really good at that. And then finally, how do we plant correctly and care for our plants? So with that, let me just go ahead. I'd like to start with ideas from the Pope. And one of his ideas is every plant, every animal, everything on this earth, by its very existence, gives glory to God by really flourishing. And as we lose woodlands, we're losing lots of species. So we can be thinking, well, we need to be more involved. Yes, I think that's great. We can donate money to big international causes or, the Arbor Day Foundation or other things, and I think that's wonderful. But there are a lot of things we can do closer to home, and I think that we're called to do that. I read that if every homeowner in America planted one more tree or one more bush, collectively that would be more forest than all the national parks put together. Ooh. So can we make a difference? Yes. We may only make a little difference, but if a lot of us make a little difference, it adds up. So I believe we have to intervene. I think a lot of the problems on our planet are caused by humans, and I think as humans, it's our responsibility to see what we can do to try to intervene and see if we can't help with that. One thing we can do is we can try to learn what plants are most helpful. So a couple of these plants that are here, and those of you who are sitting close probably can kind of see the plant and animal combinations I have here. In the upper right is a swallowtail butterfly on a pawpaw tree. And on the lower one is a possum on a persimmon tree. I have both of those kind of fruit trees in my yard, and I really like them. And I don't actually get a lot of fruit from them because with the persimmon, if anybody's ever tasted one that's not ripe, you really pucker up. You only do it once. And as soon as they're ripe, the possums just strip the tree. They love it. With the pawpaws, until they're ripe, they just don't have flavor. And when they're ripe, they're wonderful. And then an hour later, they're starting to go bad. The shelf life is minuscule. So you could get a plant that, maybe you can get with your kids or your grandkids and sort of see what plants support what animals and choose a plant that's going to support an animal, like you're going to adopt a particular bird or butterfly or something. And that's just one thought. Another thought is there are some plants, trees, such as a lot of oak trees, that really support a great number of animals, just a huge number, hundreds. I mean, a lot of those are small ones, but then the birds eat those small ones, and we love the birds, so we can look that way. Caring for our ecosystem is farsighted. When we plant we plant a tree, it's partly for ourselves, but in most cases, the trees are not going to really reach their maturity until long after we're gone. And we can have some that really have a lasting impact. One of my favorite trees in my yard, I've got several, most of them are pretty small, are mockernut hickories. And I love the mockernut because they have this big, beautiful red blossom that the leaves and stems all come out. And the other reason I love it is a healthy one lives 350 years. So I'm trying to put something in the ground that's going to be good for 10 generations. Now, a lot of oaks and hickories and maples can live 100 years or more. So we're giving a gift to the future when we do that. And then the final thought here, is, I was trying to just get down here on the, I don't think I get to the bottom of the notes. All living creatures are connected. Now, the more I've learned about trees, the more I understand underground, the roots are interconnected and the fungi help the plants communicate. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on. But the part that I think is really important for us is if we really want to have a good, clean environment, we need to have our plants. You know, that it all starts with that. So, I know this is a Jesuit institution, and I'm going to talk about the apostolic preferences on the next slide. But as an undergraduate, I went to Benedictine College. And I still think that some of the Benedictine values really resonate well with me. They don't conflict with the Jesuit values, they just sort of approach it from a different direction. And by the way, these leaves were from my yard just one day in October. And it's I have a half acre, so it's not like I've got an enormous thing. It is very possible to have many interesting plants in a small place. So the first Benedictine value is accountability. And what we really are is we're responsible to love the world the way God loves it. You know, it's kind of hard to love something unless you know it. So you don't all have to be an expert like Karen. You don't have to be an enthusiast like me, but you really should learn enough about what plants thrive in your yard and what animals they support. If you can do that, then you can love them. And the accountability is one side, that we really have that responsibility. Kind of a flip side of the same coin in my mind is humility. And humility is a tough one. I mean, you know, I'm a retired professor. I love being up in front of people. So humility isn't something that comes easy to me. But what we want to do is we want to understand, what does humility mean when it comes to plants? Well, think about how you treat yourself and your family members in terms of your health. Don't you try to have wholesome food? You try to have enough rest. You try to have enough exercise. You try to do the right things. And if you do the right things, your chances of being healthy and living a long life are better. But God is in control. You could still have an accident. You could still have cancer. You could, you know, something could happen. So we're expected to do what we can. We're expected to learn what we should be doing and try it. But at the same time, we have to have the humility to understand everything doesn't work perfectly. The same thing will be true when you get a plant. You know, you're going to have to plant it correctly. You're going to have to water it the first couple of years. And even after that, if there's a terrible drought, you water it some more. Protect it from the deer. You do all the right things, and chances are you'll be fine, but you might not. You know, our tree supplier is, I've worked with him quite a bit, and the vast majority of the things we get are great, but every once in a while there's a problem, and he says, you know, that tree was a dud, I'll give you a new one. You know, so you do the best you can there. Stability is another one, and what I like about the stability is I love, the back part of my yard is wooded, and I've got a path there, and pretty much every day the weather's good, and even sometimes when it's not, I just sort of go out and slowly walk around the path. If my grandkids are there, I run around chasing them, or they chase me. But it gives me a sense of belonging, and that stability is really good. I think that you could be a better person if you have a sense of belonging and you've got stability in your life. And the last one is frugality, and that value means use what you need and don't be too wasteful. So we've had a number of people, including Karen digging up stuff on campus from some of the beds that we need, and several individuals who have donated a lot of the plants that we're going to have. a couple of mine, like the elderberries and the cranberry viburnums, just grow like crazy, so I can donate a number of those every year. And, if you like elderberry pie and stuff, it's kind of a good thing. So now, how about the apostolic preferences? Well, the first one I think kind of speaks to itself with this, is care for our common home. That's exactly what we're trying to do. It's our responsibility, and the more we understand and love our environment, the more we're going to try to take care of it. And I think everybody here probably feels pretty strongly that way. One of the ones that I like, one of the apostolic preferences I really like, is walking with the excluded. And when I first learned this, I realized this isn't, rich, white, goody two-shoes people who go in and think we have all the answers. This is, we meet other people who, many times through no fault of their own, are less fortunate, whether they're close by neighbors in the community here or on the other side of the world, and we try to learn from them. So we're learning from them as much as they're learning from us. And yes, we really do hope we're helping them. But it's not all one-sided. We learn from them too. So Lori was good. She was suggesting that maybe we give more of these plants to Evanston. And we've already had some of that discussion. We're trying to figure out who to do that with and how and so forth. Because what we want is for people who adopt these plants to take care of them and to really value them. We don't want them to think, oh, those are the 10 that got left over nobody wanted. We want them to be able to get ones that they really want, that they think are good. And by the way, I'm hoping that many of you will also have contacts and friends who are maybe a little less fortunate, and they could use them. So maybe if your yard doesn't need a tree and you know somebody else who might be able to use one, maybe you'll use your tree to help them, and you plant it together and work with them. That we walk with the excluded. Unfortunately, I think in terms of global warming and a lot of things, a lot of people in impoverished neighborhoods are getting more of the brunt of this because they don't have the shade trees. The problems that are there sometimes are worse for certain people than for others. So we really would like to find a way to help people who need it the most. We really would like our kids to be involved. We've said, if you've got more than one kid, get one tree for each kid. The same thing would be true within reason for grandkids. If you've got 4 or 5 grandkids, maybe. If you've got 15 or 20, we don't want you to wipe us out. But we'd like to get them involved. One of the things we're going to do this year is we're actually going to have some seeds and nuts available. And we'd like the kids to be at a table when we give out the trees to give out those. So that would be good. And then we're going to try to show our way to God. We're going to think about this a lot more and pray and see how we can do things better. So the next slide is on health benefits from plants. Who wants to tell me one of the main health benefits you see from plants? Oxygen. She's the first one who spoke. You can get first choice on one of those little trees. Yeah. There's a lot of benefits. Before I talk about those, let me talk about this slide, though. 3 years ago, I guess it was 3.5 now because it was in the fall, we had a bunch of friends over for a cookout and everything, and we had a lot of little trees that we dug up from our yard. And the maples and the poplars that were just growing like crazy, they went in a hurry. And there were 2 little trees left at the end. And then my friend Chip said, I'll take that one. It's a sycamore. And because it was so small and puny, it was like knee-high maybe at the most, he called it Chuck. It was his Charlie Brown tree. Well, now 3 years later, it's 12 feet tall. Really healthy. The other one I kept. It was a Buckeye. It was the one here that you can probably see. And it was very small also, and it had a crooked trunk, and nobody wanted it because the trunk was crooked. Well, it's grown about 3 feet a year. In 3 years, now it's 10 feet tall. It has those beautiful blossoms in the springtime, and it does very well. I just planted it right at the front of my woods so I can see it out my window every day. And you know what? It's still crooked. I tried to straighten it out, and it just resisted all that. But if you think about it, this tree is imperfect, but it's interesting. It adds to the mosaic of my garden. What about all the people in the world who are special, who have, something unusual about them? They add a great deal to the mosaic of our community. And I think it's the same kind of thing. So, and behind it's a wild crabapple tree that just came up and looks pretty. So, how about physical health? What are some physical health things that you've heard about with trees? Aspen.
Isn't that a willow bark?
I'm a willow?
I always heard that the willow bark was, you used to be able to drink willow bark tea, and basically you got the chemical compound out of it.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that one. Well, you get a tree. You, oh, yeah, there's a lot of, and that's one reason why we don't want plants to disappear, any particular species to disappear, because maybe it's got something that we really need. I remember once I was in a national park out west, and I asked, when I was just starting to learn some of this stuff, I asked the ranger there, well, what kind of trees should I plant in my yard to really help, thinking is maybe something that was not doing so well? He said, go find something that is native in your area that is in very limited numbers and plant that. And I think that was good advice. Have you ever heard anything about looking out the window in a hospital? What's that? If you see a tree, if you see greenery, the studies have shown that people tend to have better outcomes. We've actually seen some studies that show slower cognitive decline in elderly if they're exposed to greenery. I mean, there are just a lot of things. A lot of kids have better self-esteem if they're out there. Even smelling the trees has an advantage sometimes. The mental health, that it calms people in many cases. And then the relational, and again, that's kind of what I'd said, is we feel a sense of belonging. So I think that there's a lot of benefits. Now, why specifically native? And what is native? I've been on the tree committee where I live in Anderson Township for, I guess, maybe 10 or 12 years now. And we used to have some discussions or even arguments, sort of, what's native and what's not. And what I have come to understand is essentially if the native bugs and birds and animals can eat the plant, then it's native. If you plant something and it might be beautiful and none of the native animals can eat it, it is providing oxygen, which is good, but it's depriving animals of a source of their food. And so you could have a plant that's been here longer than we have. It's been here 300 years. And if the native animals can't eat it, it still is questionable whether you'd call it native. Now, native is changing a little. I mean, I like to call some things near native. So I think I was going to do the one about the climate change. Were you doing that, or? I'll do it. She'll let me. I read recently that winters in Cincinnati by 2030, 6 years from now, this isn't the distant future, just a few years from now, will be like Western Virginia, warm and wet. And summers will be like Southern Illinois, hot and dry. So what we're seeing is plants that have done well in southeastern Ohio, in Kentucky, in southern Indiana are sometimes migrating to Hamilton County, into our area. And the animals that depend on them are migrating too. So native is still kind of a relative term. But I would suggest, to the extent you can, when you're choosing a plant, choose one that you know is going to be a native, so that it can support the animals around here too. And I believe you're up.
So Tim, you kind of goofed me up because I thought I was going to do that last slide. So.
Sorry.
Okay, so I have a short video, and we're going to watch about a minute of it. I'm just going to go back 1 second here. Yeah, so I was just going to talk a little bit about native plants also. Tim touched on a few things, that the native plants have adapted to our environment, and the wildlife around us needs the native plants to feed on. They've co-evolved over thousands of years. The native trees have adapted to our soil, and that they require less fertilization and pesticides and maintenance because they're just used to growing here in our climate. And then I just wanted to touch on many of the exotic species that are planted here have become invasive, like the Callery pear. You're going to see it starting to bloom all over the place. When you're going down the highways, it's just everything that's blooming white. Well, I shouldn't say that. Magnolias are blooming white right now. But the pears are starting to bloom. They're all over the place. They've just become invasive. And matter of fact, a year ago, they've been outlawed. You can't sell them in Ohio anymore. Two other examples of that are the honeysuckle and the kudzu vine. If you ever go south, you see that vine that's just all over the trees. They had good intents with them to, help control erosion, but they've just become invasive. I've been reading a book by Doug Tallamy. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And he has done a study with native oaks and how many caterpillars are supported by native oaks. There are 500 species of caterpillars, whereas like if you plant a ginkgo, it only supports 5 species of caterpillars. One brood of chickadees consume over 6,000 caterpillars. So you can see how important it is for us to be planting native oak trees. Similar with the monarch butterfly, we know we need milkweed for that, and it needs the milkweed for the survival. So landscaping with natives can combat climate change by reducing carbon dioxide, and that's where this next slide comes in. Long-living trees like oaks and maples are effective at storing the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide. And I have this video. This is from NASA. It's back from 2006, but it's a really good video. I think we have the sound turned off, so hopefully I'm going to kind of narrate it. And we're just going to watch about a minute of it. So it's 1 year's data in about 3 minutes, but we're just going to watch about a minute of it. Okay, so the red and orange are the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide's the most important greenhouse gas affected by human activity. And the northern hemisphere has the highest CO2 levels concentrated in North America, Europe, and Asia. So the swirling around, you can see the weather patterns disperse the carbon dioxide. And I don't know where I'm at in this video. I don't have my little timer on. Right, right. So I might be talking too fast. In spring and summer, the plants absorb substantial amounts of carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, removing some of the gases from the atmosphere. And I think it's starting to happen. See how the red and the oranges are going away? The reds and purples fade as the trees leaf out. There. So I thought that was pretty impactful to see how that works. Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so really what we had in that first part was trying to convince people planting native plants really makes a lot of sense for various reasons. So now what we want to do is segue into how to select a plant and how to select the site for it. And you notice there that in yellow we have call 811 before you dig. So I think that's a really good idea. But there are a lot of different things you need to consider about where are you going to plant. Some plants thrive in sun, some thrive in shade, and some partial. So what is the site going to be like? Is it high and dry? Is it low and wet? In my yard, my front is high and dry, my back is low and wet, and I've got different plants in both places. Not that I've always planted them, because sometimes I planted the wrong plant in the wrong place and it didn't work, so I had to move it. Do you have mostly loam? Are you lucky? When I grew up in Iowa, I didn't understand what topsoil was, because we could dig down a foot and it was still black. You know, it was just incredible. But most of us either have clay or sand or some combination. How big of a site do you have? Or is this under electric wires or something? You know, there's a lot of those things. And then for the plant, we really do want you to consider what animals you want to support. So we've tried to put some of that information there. Are you choosing one because you've got a particular idea of what's a beautiful plant? Sometimes you think, well, I've already got this. What would be a nice companion to it? What would be there? We do have 270 plants we counted today that appear to be healthy. And they're approximately a third bushes, about a third small trees, and a third that'll be large canopy trees. You're up again.
I'm just going to add a couple things to selecting plants. So when you're planting around your house, you can consider larger deciduous trees, like on the southeast and southwest side. That'll shade them in the summer, shade your house in the summer, and let the sun come through in the winter. And then evergreens on the north side work for a windbreak in the winter. And then just a couple other things about selecting a plant. You know, if it's you're going to plant it by a house, just remember, you know, if your tree's going to get 30 foot around, don't plant it 5 feet from your foundation. You see that all the time. And then also think about what's going on in your neighbor's yard also. It's kind of a polite thing to do, and you just need to, if they have a big shade tree, it might not be in your yard, but you have to consider where that shade's being cast and what their tree's gonna do. I have good relationships with my neighbors, so I always talk to them about what I'm gonna do. Make sure I don't do something that they don't like, and, okay. So the next slide is on cultivar versus variety. So cultivars, and a lot of people use it interchangeably, and I'm at fault for doing it also. I say variety instead of cultivar a lot. The cultivar has usually been bred for a certain characteristic that is a good one, maybe disease resistant, maybe it flowers bigger, maybe it's a different size than the original plant. It's usually propagated by humans, although it can occur in nature. It may or may not have seeds. And then when you're buying a cultivar, it always has the quotation marks around it, like I have up here on the Cereus canadensis forest pansy or the Ruby Falls. That's how you tell it's a cultivar of a red bud. So, and then in the varieties, that's the native one. It usually reproduces by seed, and the seed's identical to the parent. And it grows naturally in nature. Usually when you're buying those, it's just going to be labeled as Cereus canadensis if it's a red bud. So I did some reading on the variety Alba. So Alba is a white flowering red bud. And when I wrote this, I thought, wait a minute, that's wrong. It's not a variety, it's a cultivar. So I did some research on it. In Missouri, there was a white flowering red bud that they found out in nature. Two different people found them. And so it is an example of the cultivar that is natural in nature. So the question is one better than the other? Cultivars are bred for being disease resistant and have more desirable characteristics. But the issue with that is if the wildlife likes them as well, or can even digest their seeds. I did a little reading. There's a guy named Doug Tallamy. He's conducting research trials at Mount Cuba on this. And if you're interested in reading, he has a really good book out. And then I also read an article from Piedmont Master Gardeners. And the name of it is Natives or Cultivars of Native Plants, Does It Matter? So what it came down to is they said that leaf color has a lot to do if a native animal's gonna like eating on it or using it as their host plant. Size usually doesn't matter. And then they suggested that the cultivars that if you choose to use a cultivar, that you choose one that's not significantly different than the native variety. So I think that is all on cultivars. And then you're up again.
So what we're going to do now is, we thought just to give you examples, we chose 2 of the shrubs, 2 of the small flowering trees, and 2 of the large trees to profile a little. And these are all ones that we have at least 10 each of available. So 2 of the shrubs that I donated are the cranberry bush viburnum and elderberry, and they both get really big, like 10 or 12 feet tall, gangly. They'll have white flowers in the spring, so the picture there, that would be fairly typical. The cranberry bush viburnum, depending on where you get it, the fall color leaves could be quite different. Now, the ones that we have available, they tend to be more the crimson, not the, sort of burgundy, not this orangey red like on this one. They do have berries, the birds like them. They grow like crazy, so I like that. Ours are in wet spots, and they seem to thrive there. There's some shade, but not total shade. They're fairly tolerant of shade. The birds do like them, so I'm very happy with these. I think you've got the next couple.
Okay, witch hazel. So witch hazel is it's more of a shrub than a tree, but it gets to be about 15 to 20 feet. So it's usually multi-stemmed, and it likes moist woods, ravines, and naturalized areas. It likes sun or shade. It flowers in December, so it's a really, I guess you'd call it late, I think early, but it's late in the year. The blooms are yellow and they're fragrant, and they typically won't bloom until around the 6th year. So it has to be about 6 years old before it's going to bloom. So I guess you all know witch hazel. The extract is distilled from the bark of a young stems and the roots. And then I'm just going to try to hit on if we have some on campus. So we do have witch hazel on campus. It's blooming right now. Unfortunately, it is not a native. Ours is a hybrid between Japanese and Chinese witch hazel. So we have it blooming right now, and it's down at Brockman. There's some at Gallagher, Edgecliff over on Academic Mall, and the Green Roof at the Hub all has witch hazel blooming, and unfortunately, like I said, it is all not native. Okay. Okay. By the Peace Chapel? Yeah. That's the one I was talking about by Edgecliff. Yeah. Okay, and then Eastern Redbud, my favorite tree. The first house my husband and I bought had one of these right outside the kitchen window. My husband hated it because he didn't like the location. I loved it because I did the dishes and I could see it blooming. So it's about a 25 foot tree, has great raspberry colored blooms on it. Like I just said, though, there is a white variety. It grows, I think it grows fairly fast, 7 to 10 feet in 5 years. When you plant one, you'll get a pretty decent sized tree pretty quick. It's an understory tree usually. It's best in a wooded area, but then again, we plant a lot of them around here in the sun and they do okay. It likes moist, well-drained soils. It supports bees and butterflies. You can tell by one of the IDs on a redbud is those heart-shaped leaves and those little seed pods. And then I believe the one over off U Drive is native, but most of ours are cultivars. We have Appalachian Red over at Joseph. We have Ruby Falls right here in the circle of Bellarmine. We just put that in a year or two ago. We have another Ruby Falls over at Cluner Plaza. We have Golden Falls over behind CLC in New Patio area. a lot of forest pansies on campus, and then we do have 2 or 3 white redbuds over at Hussman. And their white ones are really pretty. Okay.
My turn again. This is a small tree that I like real well, the hornbeam, and it's the American hornbeam. The European hornbeam is a completely different tree, much, much huger. If you watch any of those British shows and they have enormous trees in some field, sometimes they're a hornbeam. Sometimes this tree is called musclewood. If you look at the trunk, it's sort of like sinews on an arm. I get a real kick out of that, and so it's pretty distinctive that way. It'll get maybe 20 feet, 25 feet max tall. They say it grows slow. The ones I have grown pretty quickly. So they're in sort of a wet spot right by one of my paths. And I've got 3 of them. They're all about 10 feet apart. And what's interesting is the one that gets just a little bit more sun, the leaves start turning color a few days before the second one, and that turns a little before the third one. And all 3 have a little different color of their leaves in the fall. So we've got, I don't know if it's 10 or 15 hornbeams out there. Depending on which one you get, your fall leaves may be a little bit more orangey, they may be a little bit different. And you may have 2 or 3 or 4 shades of color in the fall on the same tree. This is a really nice, if you want a native tree to substitute instead of having a Japanese maple, which are beautiful trees, this might be a really nice choice. I will warn you, if you've got compacted soil, this one won't do well there. Okay, so some people, depending on how your house was done, your soil might be real compacted. But I think it's a really good tree for a small yard. I think you got the last 2 trees.
Okay, so the sugar maple. Sugar maple is a big tree, gets about 60 foot. Look at that fall color on it, though. That's just beautiful. So it tolerates shade in a moist area. The fall colors, yellows, reds, it's really pretty. It supports all types of animals, including us, if you consider we're going to use maple syrup on our pancakes. It does not tolerate road salt pollution or compacted soil. And then we have the swamp white oak. So it's also another big tree. It would be a big shade tree, 60 foot tall. Gets more of the bronze leaves on it. ID on the leaf. It's real shiny on the one side, and then it's kind of that, I call it like silvery color on the other side. Grows well in urban settings. And this one does tolerate compacted soil, so if you have a yard that has a lot of compacted soil in it, and it is drought tolerant. Prefers a little acidic soil, easy to transplant, and may live for more than 300 years. We have a ton of swamp white oaks on campus. Academic Mall, Dana street trees, it's lined with them from Schott, CLC up to Smith. Yeah, they're really pretty trees.
I guess either one of us could have done this one too. These were leaves from my yard, obviously during the summer. If you look at this bur oak leaf, well, no, I guess that's not it. Usually, here. These little wasps grow underground, and they come up and they form these little golden balls. You know, that's where they live until they, until they hatch and come out and drop. So they don't really harm the tree. They live off the tree, but I think they're actually quite pretty. I love walking by one where, the leaves are that big and there might be 8 or 9 of those little golden balls on the bottom of a leaf. So it's sort of interesting. I asked our state yes? Yeah, a minuscule wasp. It's not going to sting you or anything. And it lives underground most of its life cycle. Yeah. And it's funny, I've got 3 of these bur oaks about the same size, and I only have the wasps are on every year, and the other 2 I've yet to see one on it. And they're not right next to each other, but they're close enough you would have thought maybe they'd come. Anyway, I asked our state forester, Wendy, of the 30 or so species, I think we have maybe 25 or 27 species of plants that we're offering, which ones will do well in compacted soil. So if you've got that kind of a thing, these would be one of the species you might look at. These are really hardy species for the most part. And then what we're adding this year, so this is the 3rd year. The first year we had 70 plants, and the second year 200. Now we have 270. So we're kind of increasing the number. Probably not going to increase it a lot more because logistically it's just a lot of work. But we're adding seeds and nuts, and so we'll have them from a whole variety of species. I purposely cut off the ones for the names on those other oaks, because oaks and the white oak species tend to sprout right away, and so I didn't realize that, and I was collecting them, and even though I put them in the refrigerator, the chinkapin and the whites sprouted right away. We've got a couple of them there that people can have. The bur oaks, which are the really big, hairy looking thing, those are sprouting like crazy, so I've got a few of those in bags that people can have. I've got quite a few of those that have sprouted, but some of the others are suspect, and so we're not sort of promising that we're going to have those acorns available. We might or might not. So once again, when you're going to plant, this is what you look for. And Karen, I think you've got the majority of the rest of it now.
Yeah, you guys get to listen to me now for a while. Okay, I'll be real fast. Okay, so when you're planting, just know what you're planting, the potential size it's going to get, growing conditions. Just plant the right plant for the right place. We're going to watch this video, and I am going to narrate it, and it's really fast. It's like less than a minute, I think. I'll try to keep up with them. Okay, so you need to choose the site and decide what you want to plant. Get your tools ready. Dig the hole 2 to 3 times the size of the root ball, but not deeper. Remove the plant from the container and rough up the root area. He'll show you using a knife on it. You can do that if you want. Then you're going to want to center the tree in the hole, and with the top of the root slightly above ground level. Do not bury it too deep. You'll drown it, suffocate it. Make sure your tree is level. You may need another eye to make sure it is. Backfill the hole, removing any air pockets. Don't replace the grass. Mulch lightly. Water it. Don't water it too much. Don't drown it. And if you have irrigation at your house, just make sure that, you know, if it's a real dry spell, irrigation might not be enough for it. You might need to water it. What I always tell people is stick your finger down in the soil, see what it, you know, how dry it is. Even if we've gotten a lot of rain, sometimes that root area dries out, and you might think, you know, everything around it's good, but it still might need some water. Go ahead and continue to water, maybe even for the first year to 2 years until it's established. Protect from the animals, put deer fencing around. We get trees torn up around here all the time. You'll see we have the fencing on our trees. He used a stick in the video. You can use a shovel. Just lay your shovel across there to make sure it's at the right height. All right. So I was out getting my oil changed, and I had to walk around a plaza, and I saw this tree that was planted way too high. The mulch is all up around the base of the tree. And it's not real happy in that little tiny spot, but we're always doing that, putting those trees in those little islands. And then this is our weeping Katshura tree over at Gallagher. You can see the root flare. It's got a nice mulched area around it. It's pretty happy. Doesn't like its haircut it got last year. But little misunderstanding there of what was going on. Okay, so I'm going to go through some pests real fast. Spotted lanternfly. I luckily have not had any dealing with this yet, but I think we're going to. So it's sucks the sap from the wood. These are the nymphs, and this is what their stages are. Oh, I'm pointing, and I forgot I don't have a pointer up here. So, and then that's the adult. The adults appear in July through fall, and then that last picture is the egg mass on a tree. They also lay masses like on trailers, trains, and that's how they're moving around. They look like mud on it. If you see these, you need to report them like right away. There's the phone number on there. I think everyone has the slides and everything, and we can watch this again, right? Okay. Next one is our Asian longhorn beetle. It has been found out, this is Claremont County, it's like a 57-acre area that's been quarantined. It's a pretty bad little bug. The larvae are up there. You can see it drills a hole in the tree, and it attacks a lot of hardwood trees. It arrived in 1996 and has been around for a while. It was found in Claremont County in 2011. One of its little characteristics is it has little blue feet. Can you see its blue feet? So just like the emerald ash borer, how they told you not to move wood. If you're going camping or something, buy your wood where you're going camping. Don't take it from here. Colorado blue spruce. It's having some issues. You know, it's from Colorado. It doesn't grow here naturally. It's not a native. It's susceptible to fungal diseases, branch dieback. This picture has bagworm on it. We get them around here. I try to pick them off. I try not to spray if I don't have to. If it's just a few of them, I just pick them off. You need to get rid of them though. Meaning to be gross, but stomp on them or something, because they will just walk. I've had them hanging on the back end of my truck when I'm driving around. Okay, so what's going on with my boxwood? Has anyone had problems with boxwood? Has anyone looked into it? What's going on with them? Anyone have anything tested? Did you have yours? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was that cold spell right before Christmas in 2022. So this picture here was this statue right out here. They were perfectly good in the fall of 22, and by late summer, if you can see, they're gone. So we think they had Volutella blight, and then with the winter weather we had, it just did them in. And that's pretty much what we're hearing on the boxwood. If it is Volutella and you have, they're not, like, we've already ripped some out because they looked so bad here that we have to replace them. And we are gonna go back in with boxwood. I'm researching what are the best varieties, and I've been told not to give up on boxwood, that we should still try to plant them. But that's up to you. There's other plant material out there that are evergreen that you could use. So the next thing that's coming for the boxwood, if it's not enough, the box tree moth. There's been, it's native to East Asia. It's been found in Hamilton County, one place. They quarantined it. It does defoliate the plant. None of ours around here have the boxwood moth. I've looked at them. This is all webbing, and the caterpillar really eats the leaf. We don't have signs of that. And then those are the pictures of the moth. But it's another one just to be aware of, and if you see it, report it to the extension office. I have Hamilton County's extension office up here, but then Warren, Butler, Claremont, all of them have extension offices. These are just some references and helpful websites, and then I realized there's another sheet back in the back that has a bunch of websites also. These are just like my favorite ones that are go-to websites that I really think have good information on them.
So we just want to wrap it up by encouraging you to choose a plant, take care of it and everything, but also pay it forward. That on the thing that Tim has, it's asking, do you want to make a small donation? Do you have different kinds of plants in your yard that you might want to donate in the future? Can you collect seeds and, that we could distribute? Can you help us on April 21st when we're helping people take their plants to their cars and things like that? So any way you want to help, we very much appreciate it. So thank you very much. I think it's time for Tim to get you into your groups. Is that right?
Yeah, let's thank them for. So I'm sure you have questions, but we're going to spend about 10 minutes in groups right now. So find 3 to 4 people you don't know, if you can, and share. There's 2 questions on this sheet you got as you came in, but essentially, what did you hear today that was interesting to you or surprised you, and how might you integrate what you learned into your yard or into your community space? If you're on the Zoom, Katie's going to go open up that Zoom room for you now. So we'll be 10 minutes. I'll give a 1-minute warning, and then we'll come back and do some Q&A.
You communicated with them last week. I think they have a second video. That one was fast. Higher resolution than photos, but you could probably just, do a screen, thing where you're just taking you
Yeah.
and have you and the M. I mean, if it's high enough resolution.
And then I almost look like I have like that Batman mask on.
Oh, I know. It does. You must have been wearing a dark cap too.
I think I had my Xavier.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say. Oh, there, yeah. 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 Right.
Just a 1-minute warning here. All right, I invite you to come back to the large group here. We've got about 15 minutes for Q&A. I'm going to ask you to speak into this mic with your questions so it gets picked up on our recording. So, and you guys can come back up.
We were talking about, because a lot of us have like trees that are already established in our yards, and if they're not native trees, but they might be like 30 or 40 feet, because like a tree's a tree, do we still keep those trees, or do we try to replace our yard with as many native plants as we can?
Keep your trees.
Yeah, I would certainly say that too. Right here. She was next, yeah.
Who is we?
We?
Y'all kept talking about we have.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. There are several of us, the two of us, Tim, Chris has helped, Mike is back there has helped, a couple of others. There's 6 or 7 of us. Well, yeah, here. And a couple of other people from
The grounds
the
crew.
grounds crew to help dig up the plants. So there's, yeah, probably 8 or 9 people who've made substantial help.
And we welcome anyone else too.
Absolutely, we do.
I want to thank Xavier University and everything you guys have done, because you brought those 2 big trucks out when we were at the Little Miami Nursery. How many plants did he give us?
Ooh, I think we got 150 from John. I got 20 more that I just brought in today, the little ones. But yeah, we filled up two Xavier University trucks really full. I mean, not just on the bottom, but you know, we stacked them a little bit. And then we went to a friend's house in Claremont County and dug up, I think, 38 plants there. We filled up a whole Xavier truck with those. So, yeah.
You had on your list up there is a spice bush. Mm-hmm. And how well does that do in a shady spot?
I have one, well, I have 2. One that barely survives, it's in a high and dry spot that's shady. And the other one is probably at least 10 feet tall and does just that broad and full and all that. It's in a wet, shady spot. It is magnificent,
Okay.
but a heavy shade,
Heavy shade, okay.
heavy shade.
I have 2 questions. The first one being, for those of us who still have boxwoods that are alive, how can we best keep them alive? Because when I Googled, there were so many different things that were killing them. And I don't know if what I'm doing is what's helping them or I'm just lucky. And second would be, would you ever consider any small native plants? I know that you said trees and shrubs are getting to be a lot, but I've been buying some small plants at the nature center and that's been really wonderful and I don't have a lot of space. So they're great.
I want you to handle the boxwood question.
So, yeah, the boxwood, do they look really good?
Passing grade.
A B, not an A.
So if they have some, like, dead in them, trim that off. Did you check the stem real well to make sure there wasn't, like, scarring or? Look at the stems and just make sure, like, if, go online and look at, like, blight and volutella, because I don't have anything up here, to see what the stems look like. And then you're supposed to cut it below that area. We have some around here that I've been cutting back. We won't yank every boxwood out of Xavier, but in some of the high-profile areas that they looked really bad, we had to replace them. But in other areas, we'll just be cutting them back. They usually respond pretty well to it. It's going to depend on the variety. But like I said, just start researching boxwood. That's what I've been doing. My one grower said that there's one called, I think, Little Missy, and it's a pretty small one. It's like 2 by 2. It doesn't get real big. And it behaves itself, so that's maybe one to look at. But that's what I've been doing because we have to go back in with boxwood real soon. And I just want to make sure I get some good varieties. Look at ones that keep good green color through the winter, maybe behave themselves so you're not doing a lot of trimming on them. And there's, I should have wrote it down to have it on, I have like 2 different other varieties that do better with the winter burn. You can email me if you want, and then I'll reply to you. And then,
Karen, just to clarify, Karen, boxwoods are not native to this area, though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on one of the sheets that I did print out, there's one side that has trees, and on the flip side, it's native perennials that I'm really familiar with. Like, I don't like talking about things that I'm not familiar with. So the ones that I have listed back there, so grab one of my sheets and, but yeah, that's what I do. I don't have a real big yard, so I go more for the shrub type of thing and the perennials.
But to answer your question, when we consider it, I think we should throw it into the discussion for next year. The first year we only had trees, and then Lori suggested bushes. We added those, and that seems to be a really good add. So I'm certainly open to the discussion, but there's sort of a committee that would have to decide.
This is a comment. I'd like to thank both of you for doing what you do. I was a student here as an undergrad from '84 to '88, and this campus has come a long way. And thank you, Tim, for your donations, everything you do, and Karen for making this campus what it is today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a whole team that works with me.
Yeah. And I agree, the campus looks fabulous.
I want to put a plug in for Tim. So Anderson Township has a garden tour either the first or second Sunday of June every year. I highly recommend, and Tim's house and garden is there.
I'm not on this year. I've been on 3 times.
Oh, you're not this year?
I'm skipping a year.
Oh,
Our daughter is moving right about that week, so
Well, you can,
it's not the right time.
yeah, anyway, he's got a beautiful,
But yeah,
beautiful area.
thank you.
I have kind of a tree question. Oh, sorry.
if I wanted to grow an oak tree, how would I know that my yard is actually big enough? Because they get very big. And if my lot's like 25 across, is that going to be big enough?
Well, that might be a candidate for a cultivar that's a narrow one. I mean, if you see, there's a fair number of oaks that are sort of street trees that are really narrow. That's
Yeah.
one possibility. Another, I don't know, do you mind if it gets up high, then it spreads out past your
No,
property?
that's fine. In the back, there's no wires or anything.
Well, like, those two real cute little ones that are there, those are chinkapins, and they came from my daughter's yard, and, the acorns came from her tree. And I bet you she doesn't have a branch on her tree for the first 30 or 35 feet. Wow. I mean, they grow straight, and it gets broad at the top. So you look at the different kinds of oaks.
And I would say also, just like I said before, like, where's your neighbor's house and what is it going to interfere with once it gets big and, you know.
There's a dwarf chinkapin too.
And we have some columnar oaks on campus. There's one over on both sides of Cintas. There's a couple down at Bergman Center.
A columnar or a dwarf might be ones you might consider.
Yeah.
Can I add a warning about, wow, it's really loud, other invasive plants that I think a lot of people are not aware of as being categorized as invasive? Burning bush.
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people have in their yard and they love, and it's like, I've done a lot of invasive species removal in woodlands. I hate that plant. So like, I just try to raise awareness any chance I can.
Yeah, it's out in the wild at the Cincinnati Nature
And
Center.
lesser celadon is just horrible.
I know that the cicadas are coming, they're gonna come on real strong this year. Nature's way of tipping trees, plants, bushes. What is your suggestion as far as the little saplings, which are very small and it doesn't take much to take them out?
Netting.
Yeah,
Put netting
probably if
around
it's a
them.
real small one, netting. I will tell you that the last year that we had a really big cicada invasion, it was just wonderful because we've got a serviceberry tree, and the birds usually eat the serviceberries before they get really ripe. That year we got all kinds of ripe serviceberries to eat, and it was wonderful because the birds were fat from cicadas.
I think we have time for one more question.
So I've been busy in the past few years clearing a hillside from honeysuckle. So just kind of wanted a recommendation. Now it's a kind of a bare hill. So what would be a good replacement for honeysuckle?
Well, I think there's several things. A longer term thing, this is not the only thing to do, is I would spread a lot of seeds from red buds and some good understory trees there, trying to get some of those to just grow naturally. But spicebush, red bud, pawpaws, those would be really good in that spot probably.
Yeah, I agree.
Those wouldn't be the only ones, but those would be some that would be high on my list.
Let's thank Tim and Karen again. Thank you for sharing with us. We're at a Jesuit university, but in the words of St. Francis, I think we got to know Brother Tree and Sister Shrub a little better. A few wrap-up announcements. This recording is going to be on the Bellarmine YouTube, so share it with others. We're also going to divide it up into chunks and share it through our bulletin and on social media. So if people just want to learn about how to plant trees or which ones work, you can get them in smaller segments. What you're all waiting for, if you didn't notice, there is a QR code on your pamphlet when you came in that says native tree and shrub order form. That form just opened today, so you get first choice on the trees or shrubs. One per household, unless, like Tim said, you have children or grandkids that you want to get more than one. Some of those varieties only have like 3, some have 10 to 15 plants, so order them now. The other thing I just wanted to make sure you saw on here is the upcoming events. We've got 2 more planned for this spring. On the 27th, we're taking a tour of the Recycling and Reuse Hub. If you haven't been there, they really help us recycle almost anything you can imagine, and it'll be a nice time to learn more about what they're doing. And then on April 6th, we're going to go and do some invasive species removal with the Mago Earth Center over in Price Hill. So sign up to join us for that as well. And there are... Oh, Tim doesn't want to take these plants home, so check in with him to get a free one. And then there are some cookies and some juice and water out there for everyone. So thank you for being with us.